Joining us to talk about these issues here and help us sort out exactly what's going on is former FEMA coordinator Mark Nouveau. Mark, I really appreciate you coming on here to help us make sense of all this. So, what is your take on what happened here? Why do you think we saw this turnaround from the Trump administration?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Good afternoon, Alex. What's interesting about it was when Governor Newsom was the lieutenant governor, he requested a declaration for a fire in California, and it was denied. Now that he's been governor, he's requested a number of wildfire presidential disaster declarations, and he's been able to get it. So his work, along with the FEMA and Cal OES folks here in the state, have allowed them to be able to provide up to $350 million in reimbursement for recovery and response activities associated with the fires that you mentioned earlier. So it's good news. Whatever's working, keep it up.
Sure. So when FEMA initially denied California's request for aid here in reference to these 6 fires, the agency said essentially that these fires did not meet the threshold for federal assistance, sort of in essence saying that this was not beyond what the state of California or local entities could handle. How much do we know about the criteria that has to be met in order to get federal assistance, as part of a disaster declaration?
Yeah, the kind of the factors, the formula that's being used is the same that FEMA uses across the entire country for each state that requests assistance. And basically what they do is they partner up with local officials, in this case, it might be Los Angeles, Sonoma, whatever, along with Cal OES officials and FEMA officials. They go out and take a look at the burned areas and they determine what's damaged, schools, roads, wires, water distribution, whatever it may be. They put a cost to that number. Then what they do is they take a look at the population in that state, in this case 40 million, and there's a factor used, either $1 or $3, and they have to determine that that damage exceeds the factor multiplication, so in this case, $120 million. And this one did exceed it, and so that's why they were able to get it. Initially, they didn't reach that because they didn't have enough information. Also, the discussion, sometimes when you're trying to communicate that through paper, it's not always easy to do. So to have discussions brings clarity to what that request was, Alex.
All right, so obviously all this is, playing out against the political backdrop here. And we know President Trump has taken shots at California. He has threatened to withhold federal disaster aid in the past here. Do you think that any part of this might have been politically motivated? And how would we find that out?
Well, I'm not sure it is or isn't, because in this particular case, California is pretty Democratic. And I think for the most part that, California is probably going to vote for a Democratic candidate. So I'm not so sure the president would curry favor by doing it. I think it's more about discussions between 2 executives trying to figure out how to make things whole. And in California, remember, just recently we had 27 major wildfires going with 19,000 firefighters. So the cost is just astronomical. In this case, that discussion yielded probably the benefactor is California. But remember, California is one of the few states that provides more money to the federal treasury than gets back. And so in this case, we're getting money back. So that's good for California, good for Californians.
Yeah, and despite President Trump and Governor Newsom sort of sparring in many cases publicly, apparently behind the scenes on these disasters, they have been, had a good working relationship, is what we're told. We have to leave the conversation there. We always appreciate you coming on to break these things down. Former FEMA coordinator Mark Nouveau, good to have you. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. You too.